Special Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching is the highest recognition that a kindergarten through 12th grade teacher in those fields can receive, and only up to 108 teachers in the country receive that recognition each year. That makes it especially amazing that 2 JCPS teachers were honored this year. Joining me now is one of those recipients, Torri Martin. Torri, thank you so much for talking with me today, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So, Torri, first of all, this is such a huge honor. How did it feel when you found out that you received the award?
Well, I was a little flabbergasted. I was actually in the middle of a class. I'm currently studying to be a principal when I found out, and I jumped up and I had to slap off my camera and ran around the house really excited. But I was blown away by the fact that I had actually won it. It was a long process. It takes a long time to do all of the submissions. There's a lot of writing, and they film your class and that kind of thing. And the fact that I was chosen was just very humbling.
Wow, I didn't even realize that they film your class. So, I mean, they really take their time. This isn't just something that they're like, oh, I wrote an essay, and they're really particular.
It takes an entire year from the nomination to the end part of it.
Wow. And you chair the math department at Brown School. You're also involved in numerous clubs and programs. And this is your 8th year with JCPS. What is it about being a teacher that inspires you to be so involved?
Well, I think when I first started teaching, I came to teaching later. This was a later career shift for me. And I had a multitude of wonderful examples and teacher leaders in the buildings that I started off in. And they were such an inspiration that they shared what they knew. They sought to make me a better teacher. And so I have tried to do the same thing as I've progressed through my teaching career, is to share what I know and to help other people along the way.
Okay, now we're going back a little bit. You said teaching is actually your second career. Is it true that you previously worked as a costume designer?
I did. When I first, I did theater when I was in undergrad. And when I first graduated, I looked at 2 master's programs. One was in teaching, and then one was in costume design theater. And I went in that route. And I have a master's in theater, and I worked at various theaters all over the country. And I did that for quite a long time until I had my children. And so then I took a step back from that at that time.
Is it true that the math involved in designing costumes actually is kind of incorporated into your job as a math teacher, right?
Well, and it's one of the examples I give to my students because, I teach middle school students, and math is not always their favorite subject. I know that's shocking. And I have sketches from when I was working up on my wall, and I always tell them that you never know when you're going to use math. And when I was making patterns or building costumes, I used math all the time. And so even in a field that was as creative as I was in, math was still very much a part of it. And so I want my students to see those real world connections of where the subject matter that they're learning in class has applications just beyond, our small little classroom, but into their future lives.
Yes, and it's so cool too that you were kind of at a crossroads between going into the design or teaching, and you've done both now. That's pretty amazing.
Well, and I always tell them, because I think a lot of times students will say, "Well, I'm a creative person, and so I'm not good at that math and science." And I'm like, you can be both. It's not just one. We all have multiple gifts and abilities, and so you can be creative and you can love math.
That's the epitome of getting creative, is get creative with how you can be creative and incorporate them. And what is your favorite part about teaching?
I think one of my favorite parts about teaching is really interacting with the students. I love middle school students. It's a crazy age for them. They're growing so much in their personalities. They're discovering who they are. And when I can get to know them and then also see little lights going off above their head when they understand something that I'm teaching, that's probably one of my favorite parts of teaching.
That definitely is an age where you can make a huge impact, because I know I would never want to go back to middle school age of that is a tough time. And
Yes.
I know that right now there's so much stress and uncertainty around school. Do you have any advice for parents, students, or teachers?
Well, I think My biggest piece of advice is, and I have a freshman, one that's going to high school and one that's going to college, and so I feel it on the parent end as well when you don't know exactly what's going on, and it's very daunting. And I think I want parents to understand that even if you're not seeing it all right now, that teachers and the districts are working so hard to get everything into place, and that we need to make sure that as parents that we are extending grace to teachers, and we want to model for our children, um, that you can be excited about upcoming school year, even if it's going to look different, and to try to keep our personal anxieties from overwhelming our students as well. And I think the same thing goes from the teachers, that we need to understand that parents are anxious and that students are anxious. And so when we are starting our school year, we need to honor those emotions and make sure that we are being a reassuring presence for both our students and for our families.
Absolutely. That is wonderful advice. Torri, thank you again so much for talking with me, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. I was happy to be here.